So I can't quite seem to get the angle that I want because I'm unused to doing landscape, but I figured that was probably better for YouTube. So I would like to take a minute to have a chat. I did a few videos this week that got a little heated, but the premise of which I never did actually explain. And that is why it is actually problematic to identify witchcraft as a religion. So witchcraft, all forms of witchcraft, do have a spiritual element to them. This can be in the form of witches who work with spirits, the departed. It could be deity work. It could be entities of any background. But ultimately, witchcraft itself is not a religious practice. It's missing a lot of the fundamental elements to be considered a religion. For example, we don't have one set dogma for all of witchcraft. We don't have one set of morals and ethics to follow. And ultimately, anyone who's been practicing for a decent amount of time understands that witchcraft is the tool that is used. It's the vehicle in order to get to the destination. It is not the destination or even the journey. Witchcraft has so much cultural connection as well that we can't ignore. And that is particularly why we get into it being a problem. It's because the people who pontificate about witchcraft being a religion are only looking at one specific ethnicity. Can you guess which one? It's the caucasity of it. Most people who are talking about witchcraft as a religion are looking almost exclusively at European historical witchcraft, ultimately relying on the erasure of other cultures who participate in witchcraft practices. Because sure, colloquially, we can understand that witchcraft, the word itself, and our initial concepts of what it means do come from Europe. But that in no way means that that word is pigeonholed exclusively to traditions that come from Europe. Because even more specifically, they're talking about a certain region of Europe. And that's British Europe. They're not even including things like Italian folk tradition, Greco-Roman traditions, or any part of the continent really. It takes away one of the fundamental things that I love most about witchcraft and practicing witchcraft, and that's diversity. My final thesis would have been pretty darn boring if there hadn't been any kind of diversity. My main area of study was, of course, folk tradition and practices, its evolution and adaptation over time. And when you pigeonhole a term that has such widespread meaning globally into only one, meaning one thing, it just does such a disservice. And I feel is very naive and narrow-minded, as well as being incredibly harmful, whitewashing of course, and would ultimately just lead me to believe that the person who is trying to pontificate, to push this narrative that witchcraft is a religion, doesn't really understand witchcraft. Because witchcraft in and of itself, like I said, is not a religion. It is not a devotional practice, and is missing so much of the fundamental criteria to be one. I've said this, and I'll say it many, many times after this. Witchcraft does not equate paganism, and paganism does not equate witchcraft. The two are not mutually exclusive. You can have a practicing witch that doesn't have a faith, and you can have someone who is practicing a faith, whether it be paganism or something else, that does not utilize witchcraft. And of course, there are exceptions to this rule. I asked a question on my TikTok last year. It was about whether or not Wicca is the religion of witches. And I got so many interesting and engaging responses to that from several creators. One of which was Thorn Mooney, who is a third-degree high priestess of Gardnerian Wicca. I hope I got that right. And that she explained in amazingly eloquent terms that I could never repeat, of course, But she had explained that it is synonymous within her path and practice, witchcraft and Wicca, witchcraft religion, that the religion part of the witchcraft cannot be separated. So in that instance, there's absolutely an exception to the rule. But that's where the nuance and critical thinking comes into effect. Like even in some pagan practices, there are elements that we also see within witchcraft, utilizing specific ritual in order to perform devotion or worship. So I'm not denying the crossover, of course, but you're a witch because you've dedicated yourself to this practice of being a witch. So if you're engaging in witchcraft elements, but not with the purpose of it being witchcraft, but with the purpose of it being a pagan ritual, then it is not inherently witchcraft, because you yourself are not ascribing that title to it. And that's where we can utilize another keyword of discernment. And ultimately, what I think of when I see somebody who is trying to, I don't know, almost shrink the definition of witchcraft to have it fit into a very neatly packaged, point form availability that we see when somebody says witchcraft is a religion, or they're not utilizing their discernment and saying, well, if you're practicing a ritual, then that's witchcraft, or I can separate all of witchcraft from all of religion. Anyone who is saying these kinds of things, I think, are in need of more decolonizing and specifically de-Christianizing of their path and practice. Because honestly, that sort of narrow, blinder tunnel vision is only really seen within Abrahamic faiths, which makes sense because most of our Western society is built on the foundations of Christianity, Christian concepts, and the Abrahamic faiths. The way that we organize society, business structures, educational structure, obviously religious structure, as the umbrella of Abrahamic faith is exceptionally wide, but all of which is very neatly categorized with a very black and white view and no crossover. But these are all elements that you really only start to see through once you've been practicing for probably several years. If it's not something that you inherently think of off the bat, and what I've said, you've just kind of clicked and gone, whoa, it's nothing on you. It takes a significant amount of deprogramming to be able to naturally get there. And it's work. It's hard work. Not only deprogramming, but de-Christianizing, decolonizing these paths and practice that we hold most dear to us. So I think I've covered all of the bases that I wanted to with this video. I've explained why it's a problem. I explained how it's not a religion. I explained where that kind of mentality and thinking could come from. But honestly, I want you to question the material that you just engaged with. I want you to put in the effort to critically think about even the things that I've said. Do further research on it. Expand your knowledge and understanding. And hopefully I will be back again soon. Since this is my first formal kind of video for this platform, it would be amazing if you could like this video, subscribe to my channel, and hopefully I will have more content for you soon. Thank you so much for your time.